The silence in the house was deafening, except for the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. My fingers anxiously tapped against the wooden dining table as I stared at the untouched dinner. The food had gone cold a long time ago, just like my hopes of Jungkook coming home tonight. A deep sigh escaped my lips as I glanced at the time, 11:47 p.m. He was late again. I had spent hours preparing his favorite dishes, hoping just this once he would sit down and have a proper meal with me, but reality was a cruel thing. Jungkook barely came home on time, and even when he did, he rarely ate anything I made. I chewed on my lower lip, a thousand thoughts swirling in my mind. How do I bring it up? How do I tell him to live this dangerous life? Jungkook was powerful, feared by many, and buried deep in a world I wished he wasn't part of. But I knew him, he wasn't a bad man. He wasn't ruthless without reason. But every night he stepped out, I feared he wouldn't come back. Would he listen to me? Would he even consider leaving this life, or would he get angry? A chill ran down my spine at the thought of his cold, piercing gaze. Jungkook was never cruel to me, but his sharp words, his unreadable expressions, they scared me sometimes. I grabbed my phone from the table, fingers trembling slightly as I scrolled to his number. Pressing the call button, I held my breath. I tapped my foot against the floor, waiting, hoping. Voicemail. I swallowed the lump in my throat and called again. No answer. My heart started pounding, and ease clawing its way into my chest. I scrolled further down my contacts and called Sojin. His right hand man, if Jungkook wasn't answering, at least Sojin would. But my heart dropped when the robotic voice greeted me instead. The number you have dialed is currently switched off. My grip on the phone tightened. This wasn't normal. Jungkook always kept his phone on, and Sojin, he was practically glued to his. Something was wrong. A loud rumble of thunder echoed through the house, making me flinch. I turned toward the window, my breath hitching as I watched the rain crash against the glass. The sky was angry, mirroring the turmoil inside me, my fingers curled into fists, my nails sticking into my palms. Where are you, Jungkook? My voice was barely above a whisper, but the room swallowed it whole. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to shake off the suffocating dread settling over me. He wasn't home, he wasn't answering, and my gut told me something was terribly wrong. Jungkook, please just come home. The black car screeched to a stop. It started skidding against the wet pavement, spraying water in all directions. The heavy rain pouring against the windshield, matching the fury burning inside Jungkook. With a sharp click, the door swung open and Jungkook stepped out. The freezing rain soaked his expensive suit within seconds, but he didn't flinch. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white as his hands curled into fists, his dark eyes colder than the storm itself, locked onto the hideout in front of him. Inside, Sojin stood stiff, already sensing the storm about to hit. The air grew thick with tension as the double doors burst open. Jungkook's presence alone made the room feel suffocating. His soaked clothes clung to his body, raindrops sliding down his sharp jaw. He exuded dominance power in most of all uncontrolled way. Jungkook's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Where were you when my classified documents were stolen? Sujin swallowed hard, his throat dry. He hesitated, his eyes dropping for just a split second. A fatal mistake. I said, answer me. A loud bang echoed through the room as Jungkook's fist slammed onto the wooden table. The impact made Sojin flinch, his body tensing. Boss, I don't want your excuses. His voice was sharp, his breathing uncontrolled, but his rage was anything but. Without breaking eye contact with Sojin, Jungkook snapped his fingers. Within seconds, the metal door swung open and his men dragged in two guards. Their steps were unsteady, their faces pale. They stood with their heads lowered, rainwater dripping from their disheveled clothes. Jungkook let the silence linger, making them feel the weight of his presence. Then he spoke, calm but deadly. Tell me, how did someone steal from the under your watch? One of the guards hesitated before stammering, his voice weak. Sir, we didn't mean to fail you, but someone sparked our drinks. Jungkook's expression didn't change, but the way his fingers flexed at his side was enough to send a chill down his. Another guard quickly added, his voice shaking. We passed out before we could even react. When we woke up, the documents were gone. The room was deadly silent. Jungkook's jaw clenched, his entire body radiated pure fury. Without warning, Jungkook lunged forward, grabbing the nearest guard by the collar. He slammed him against the wall with a force that made the man gasp. The impact rattled the shelves behind them, loose papers scattering onto the floor. You let someone drug you, and you call yourself my man. The veins in his arms tensed as he held the guard up, his grip merciless. The air was suffocating. No one dared to breathe. Sojin took a cautious step forward. Jungkook, we will find out who did this. But Jungkook's glare cut through him like ice. Sojin stopped mid-sentence, his mouth clamped shut. He knew better than to push Jungkook when he was like this. The guards trembled under his burning gaze, their fear evident. Outside, the storm raged on, lighting flashing through the large windows, illuminating Jungkook's stone cold expression. A small voice broke the silence. Sir, Jungkook's head snapped toward him and hesitated but swallowed his fear before speaking. Before I passed out, I saw someone. The tension in the room thickened. Jungkook took a slow step forward, his soaked boots leaving wet prints on the floor. His hand moved to the gun holstered at his side, his fingers resting over the trigger. Oh, his voice was dangerously calm. The guard hesitated, but one glance at Jungkook's expression was enough to make him speak. Leo, I saw Leo near the storage room, but before I could do anything, everything went black. Sojin's breath hitched. The other guards looked at each other, their faces paling. Jungkook stood still, too still. Then, without warning, Jungkook grabbed a glass from the table and hurled it against the wall. The sound of shattering glass echoed, fragments flying across the room. His breathing was heavy, his hands trembling with unrestrained fury. His voice was low, deadly. Leo, Jungkook's mind raced. He should have killed that traitor long ago. And now the consequences of sparing him had come back like a bullet to the chest. He turned to Sojin, his patience completely gone. Find him now. Sojin nodded immediately, pulling out his phone. His fingers moved swiftly as he sent out orders. Jungkook stepped closer, his voice venomous. I don't care if you have to drag him out of hell. Just bring him to me. His voice carried a promise of destruction. Sujin slipped his phone back into his pocket. I will handle it. Jungkook exhaled sharply, running a hand through his rain-drenched hair. His mind was already spinning with thoughts. How he would make Leo pay. How he would ensure this never happened again. As the storm continued to rage outside, Jungkook's eyes burned with one thing revenge. Leo had made the biggest mistake of his life. And Jungkook was going to make sure it was his last. The inside of the car was dimly lit by the burning tip of Jungkook's cigarette. Smoke curled in the air, mingling with the scent of leather and rain. His fingers rested against the steering wheel, his jaw clenched as he exhaled a long puff. His mind was consumed with thoughts of revenge, of Leo, of the stolen documents, of betrayal. He flicked the cigarette out of the window and rubbed his temples before finally stepping out of the car. The rain soaked him instantly, but he didn't care. He walked into the mansion, his movements slow and heavy. As soon as he stepped inside, warm arms wrapped around him. You are home. She clung to him tightly, pressing her face into his soaked chest. Chukuk, without thinking, wrapped his arms around her. The warmth of her small body against his own felt oddly grounding. Yet his mind was elsewhere. Wine sniffed, pulling back slightly. Her brows furrowed as she looked up at him. Did you smoke? She scrunched her nose at the faint scent lingering on his clothes. But Chung didn't respond. His dark eyes flickered past her, scanning the room as if looking for something else. His mind was too clouded, his anger too raw. Without a word, he stepped past her, making his way to the living room. Jungkook, let's eat. I'm not hungry. His voice was flat, emotionless. He didn't even glance at her as he continued walking toward the bedroom. One blinked in confusion. He always sat with her for dinner, no matter how late he came home. What happened today? With worry creeping into her chest, she followed him. Inside the dimly lit bedroom, Chunguk sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on his knees, his fingers interlocked as his thoughts spiraled into a dangerous abyss. I won't leave you, Leo. You took my important documents. His jaw tightened, his fingers twitched, the weight of betrayal sat heavy on his shoulders. Soft footsteps approached and then a gentle tap on his shoulder. Jungkook, he let out an irritated sigh, barely turning his head. What? His tone was sharp and it made Wine hesitate for a moment, but he had known him long enough to see through his coldness. I know you are stressed, you can share it with me. She spoke softly, her voice filled with concern. But instead of finding comfort in her words, Jungkook's frustration boiled over. You won't understand. His words came out rough, almost like a girl. One bite her lip, her fingers curling into the fabric of her dress. But I'm hungry, let's eat together. Jungkook scoffed. Did I tell you to wait for me? Go and eat. His cold dismissal made her flinch slightly. But she wasn't going to leave just yet. Instead, she reached for his hand, holding it gently in hers. Jungkook, please, let's talk. She kissed his fingers, hoping to soothe him. Her touch was warm, filled with silent love. She took a deep breath before speaking again. Please leave this mafia world, Jungkook. It's dangerous for you, for me, and for our child. Jungkook's entire body stiffened. His head slowly turned toward her, his expression unreadable. His eyes dark and stormy, locked onto hers, and then, you don't know anything. His voice was sharp like a dagger, slicing through the air. Jungkook, it's killing you. Just think about our child. His patience snapped. With a sudden rough motion, he ripped off his wedding ring. Jungkook, before she could say anything, he flung it. The silver band flew through the air, landing outside in the stormy night. Wine's breath hitched. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Her fingers trembled as she turned toward the window, staring at where the ring had disappeared into the rain. Jungkook leaned back against the headboard, rubbing his face with a tired sigh. Go eat, then sleep. We will talk tomorrow. But Wine didn't move. She stood frozen, her heart hammering in her chest. He didn't mean it. He was just angry, right? Without another word, Chogo closed his eyes. His exhaustion finally took over, and soon his breathing evened out. But Wine, she couldn't rest. She needed to find that ring. She grabbed a flashlight and silently slipped out of the house. The moment she stepped outside, the heavy rain drenched her completely. The cold wind bit at her skin, but she didn't care. Her feet splashed against the muddy ground as she rushed toward the grass, her hands shaking as she searched. Her heart clenched as she whispered to herself, Where are you? She ran her trembling finger through the wet grass, her vision blurring from the raindrops and unshed tears. He's just angry. Something must have happened. Her voice cracked as she sniffled. He never behaves this way. His mood was off today. Memories flooded her mind. Jungkook holding her hand under the dinner table, smirking at her. Jungkook always being sure she ate before him. Jungkook whispering when he thought she was asleep, and now throwing away his wedding ring like it meant nothing. A sob escaped her lips, but she didn't stop searching, because even if he threw it away, she would never let it go. The morning sun peeked through the horizon, casting a golden hue over the drenched earth. Choguk stood stretching his arms as he sat up. His body still felt heavy from last night's frustration. Running a hand through his messy hair, he sighed before getting out of bed. He walked toward the window, pulling the curtains aside, and his breath hitched. There, in the cool morning air, stood Vine. Her dress was drenched, clinging to her fragile frame as she moved desperately, searching for something on the wet ground. Her hands trembled, her hair was dripping, and her lips were pale. Jungkook frowned. What the hell is she doing there? Then it hit him. The ring. His heart dropped as realization dawned on him. Without wasting another second, he ran outside. His bare feet splashed against the wet ground as he hurried toward her. Wine, what are you doing? But she didn't hear him. She was still searching, her fingers brushing against the soaked grass. Her body trembled wildly, yet she didn't stop. Jungkook reached her, grabbing her shoulders firmly. Wine, stop this, you will get sick. But before he could pull her back, Wine's eyes suddenly widened. She looked past him straight forward the fountain. Without warning, she tore herself from his grasp and ran straight into the water. Wine, she didn't listen. She stepped into the freezing water, her knees sinking as she reached forward. And then, with a soft smile, she picked up the ring. I found it. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Her lips curved into a weak smile. Jungkook felt something heavy settling his chest. Guilt. But before he could say anything, Wine's body swayed. Her eyes fluttered, and in the next second, she collapsed into the water. Wine, his heart pounded in fear as he lunged forward, catching her before her head could go under. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. Her body was ice cold, her skin damp against his. Wine, wake up. He didn't waste another second. Scooping her up, he carried her inside. His wet clothes dripped onto the floor, but he didn't care. Inside the room, Jungkook laid her down gently on the bed. Her breathing was faint, her lips pale. His fingers trembled as he quickly changed her into warm clothes, his heart clenching at how fragile she looked. He called the doctor immediately. Minutes later, the doctor arrived, checking her temperature before injecting her with medicine. Is she okay? His voice was low, tense. The doctor noted she's severely cold. Make sure she drinks swamp soup and rests. Chunguk sighed in relief, but before he could ask about the baby, the doctor spoke up again, this time glancing at him knowingly. The baby is fine too. Chunguk's breath hitched slightly. He had not even asked. He only thought about wine. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. As soon as the doctor left, he sat beside wine, his fingers running through his damp hair in frustration. He should have never yelled at her. He should have never thrown that ring. She was too sensitive, too fragile, yet she still went out in the storm, all because of him. His chest ached, his hands clenched into fists, and then his eyes landed on her palm, even in her unconscious state. She was still holding the ring tightly. Jungkook swallowed the lump in his throat, his vision blurring slightly. She never gave up on him, even when he pushed her away. A few hours later, White's fingers twitched slightly. She let out a small cough before her eyes fluttered open. The first thing she saw was Jungkook. He was sitting beside her, his head down, hands gripping hers tightly. His knuckles were white. As soon as he felt movement, he looked up, and without hesitation, he pulled her into his arms. His hug was tight, desperate. His voice was hoarse. I'm sorry, Wine. I was so frustrated last night. His grip on her tightened as if afraid she would disappear. Wine blinked, still groggy, but she slowly wrapped her arms around him. I was just worried for you, Jungkook nodded, his throat burning with guilt. He pulled back slightly, cupping her face in his hands. His thumb brushed over her cheek as he whispered again. I'm sorry, baby, I should not have treated you like that. One stared at him for a long moment, her lips slightly parted. Then, give me your hand. Jungkook's breath hissed, his eyes started to pulse, then to the ring in her palm. A lump formed in his throat. His vein blurred slightly, the weight of everything crashing down at once. A single tear slipped from his eye, then another. A small broken smile formed on his lips as he slowly lifted his hand and placed it in hers. Wine's fingers trembled as she slid the ring back onto his finger. Tied secure where it belonged. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with emotion. No matter how angry or frustrated you are, never take this off again. Jungkook let out a shaky breath and nodded. Then, unable to hold back anymore, he pulled her into his arms. Tightly, desperately. I'm sorry, Wine. I don't deserve you. Wine sighed softly against his chest, wrapping her arms around him. You do, but next time just talk to me instead of scaring me like that. Jungkook chuckled quietly, his grip on her tightening. I will try. Wine smiled against his shoulder. Maybe, just maybe this time he really would.